It's the Unnamed Indie Comic Show with Skip and Ash, featuring firepower and east and west. Comic Show with Skip and Ash, featuring firepower and east and west. It's the Unnamed Indie place for independent comic fandom. It's the Unnamed Indie Comic Show with Skip and Ash, featuring firepower and east and west. Comic Show with Skip and Ash, featuring firepower and east and west. It's the Unnamed Indie place for independent comic fandom. It's the Unnamed Indie Comic Show with Skip and Ash, featuring firepower and east and west.
Three, two, one. What is going on, everyone? It is another episode of the Unnamed Indie Comic Show with your boys Skip and Ash, and we're here to talk about indie comics. And sorry for the slight delay for those of you who are waiting. I tried my best to get it on time, but it's not quite a working train station yet, but we're working there. My boy Skip, how are you doing tonight?
Doing pretty good, man. Doing pretty good. Read some indie comics. Get to come here and talk about some indie comics with you and the chat here that joins us. So if you're listening to this on the podcast, we do this live every other Monday on Ash's channel, Ash on Comics, and we have a fantastic chat full of people like Nalo and Ryuk and Varanya and Snatchface the Fool and all sorts of people who tune in and join us and kind of help make this show more of a conversation. So we hope if you're not already joining us when we go live, we hope that you join us when we're live as well.
Absolutely, well said. Yes. So those of you who may be listening in on the first time for this show, what it is, this is a celebration kind of fan geeky podcast, whatever you want to call it, that we just love indie comics. And we like to talk about them, and we like to get people together. That's why we stream this live, so there can be a live audience of people who can throw in their opinions and their feedback and different things, and just enjoy the world of indie comics, which don't get quite as much love as we believe. In my personal opinion right now, the best comics being produced are out in the indie sphere. That's not to say that, I'm a hater of Marvel and DC. I mean, I actually love the world of mainstream comics. I wish they were just doing better, but sometimes you have peaks and valleys, and we hope that they get better. We want all ships to rise with the tide. As I don't know if that's how the saying goes, but it's something close to that. If you're listening to it on a podcast, like I said, we do it on the YouTube. You can listen to replays there, or you can find it on your podcast service, however you found it. If you come to my channel, Ash on Comics, you can leave comments there, and or you can leave comments on anchor.fm. You can leave voice comments about the podcast episodes. Love to hear from you. Love to hear suggestions about books. Definitely don't be shy about your opinions. We're always looking for new great stuff to read and promote to other people. Skip, speaking of great comics, what have you been reading in the past few weeks? Anything catching your eye?
Yeah, quite a few things have caught my eye. I always am looking for, even when I shouldn't, because I've got over 100 comics that I need to get to and finish reading. Between some like bundles of books, STARR and the filth, all that stuff that I need to like make my way all the way through. Even still haven't finished my American flag fully yet. Got some issues of those to get through as well, but it's tough to turn it off when I'm walking through the shop and I'm looking at books or someone in the chat's like, "Hey, have you tried this yet?" Hard for me to not flip through it or even get a bit of it of inspiration when I'm looking through the League of Comic Geek website to make my pull list for the upcoming. I think I'm like 6 weeks out now. I got so bored one night. I was like, let me just make my pull list 6 weeks out. But for some of the things that I did pick up recently, I was curious about the series Vinyl from Image Comics, and I ended up picking up that book. And that book was Man, it was crazy. It was really really crazy. Like hippie cult, uh, old CIA type dude who's retired with one of his old buddies who may or may not be a serial killer or may be possessed. That's not a spoiler because we don't really know anything from the first issue. It's all set up, with the exception of like the very last few pages. But like the way that the book is set up and how music was used throughout it, and rhythm, how rhythm, even just rhythm itself, is used throughout it was very interesting. So two new creators that I'm gonna keep an eye on. Uh, Gosh, the book is behind me over on my bed, but yeah, I think Wagner and yeah Hilliard, which I should probably go grab the book so I can say their first names. But again, Dave Stewart on colors. I've been talking about Dave Stewart lately. Dave Stewart also colors the UltraMega book that we've been talking about, and that we'll be talking about tonight. So, Dave, I am just becoming more and more a fan of Dave Stewart's colors. But, um, yeah, this vinyl book, it's definitely something else. It'll throw you for a loop. But I really enjoyed how the art was rendered. I enjoyed the character acting within it, and it definitely is a very interesting series. So same thing if you kind of like crime noir, kind of mystery type stuff. I can't call it a noir because it's not noir literally means black. It's not black enough. It's not dark enough as far as, visual tone, but as far as the feeling of it, it's not as comical as it may look from the cover. So definitely enjoying Vinyl.
Would you say that it's noir inspired, maybe?
Definitely noir inspired. I would absolutely agree with that.
All right, cool. What else you got going on? Any other books
Uh,
you're enjoying?
I picked up a book that my buddy Justin Greenwood did called Compass. That also came out through Image Comics. That one was really cool. You get a kind of a female protagonist, Laura Croft type person going after, or type woman going after a little bit of, I guess you can say, treasure, trying to get it for her clan, and turns out that she's stepping on some toes, and ends up getting thrown off her path. And through that, she ends up in a foreign land where they speak not a totally foreign language, one that is she is familiar with, and through that, she kind of has to take, what her knowledge of the land and of the people, and kind of make her way back on her path. And through doing so, like her opposition kind of we find out is entangled with the her allies as well. So she ends up kind of being in the middle, between a rock and a hard place, and also come to find out someone who she would normally do business with, and has done business with, and is almost a bit of a colleague, um, may not be on the side, or may be on the side that she thinks, which would be opposite to her. So again, for this one, I'm a fan of Justin's art. I love how he kind of takes a very fun approach, and it's a very kind of like joyous, I feel like, comic book style. But when it's time to like make action happen and stuff like that, Justin's very good at taking different angles and kind of giving his panels like a lot of energy and whatnot. And the two writers, it's a writing duo, Mackenzie and Walker. they're kind of newer to writing comics, and what's cool about that is most of the time when you have two newer writers, you kind of feel their inexperience. But in this particular case, it came off less like inexperience and more like people, being excited to go to a place for the first time. So it had a lot of energy in the book, and it was fun.
Really cool. What kind of comic fan do you think this book would be for? Who's it gonna appeal to?
This is very much an adventure comic. If I people say you're not supposed to do this, but if I would, liking it to some popular things within media that we enjoy, I would say this is like a little bit of Indiana Jones meet Warcraft meets like Willow.
Wow, I like all those things. I gotta maybe try this one out.
Yeah.
All right,
So there you
cool.
I also was enjoying LAILA STARR. LAILA STARR has continued to be a book that I feel like with each issue kind of ups the ante, and it's been really really good. Again, shout out to FF2. Um, and I forgot what FF2 changed his name to in here, but for the recommendation, it just continues to be awesome. And like how interesting it is for the god of death to have to find out how to live life um in spite of death, and in some ways through death even. Ram V with the script work, Felipe Andrade with the line art, and I believe that I forget who does the colors, but I got issue number 3 was a variant cover done by Danny and a buddy of ours, Brad Simpson, and it was a really really cool rendering. Of course, since I love the Coffin Bound book so much, any kind of Danny art, whether it's her Blade Runner covers that from what Ash and I read here not long ago, or her anthology story and Batman Red and Blue, or even some of her covers that she's done for Red Sonja lately. If it's some Danny art, I'm trying to get my hands on it.
So this was a book that kind of my radar didn't pick up on, and I'm being truthful here. The title doesn't grab me at all. I know it's sort of like the in vogue thing to do in indie comics right now is make these titles with many words. Someone is killing the children, the nice house on the lake. We only kill them when they're dead. It's like this new trend, the many deaths of LAILA STARR. Hey, whatever works. Hey, you guys sell comics, bravo to you. But just me as an old school comic, I'm kind of like the one word guy, like UltraMega, many deaths. I don't know what it is, but then later on, someone described to me that this was about death, the incarnate of death, kind of reminding me of like Neil Gaiman's kind of version of death, and it made it that much more interesting to me. And I feel this is why it's good, I think, to talk about these books, because sometimes covers and titles can just lead you astray, and you're like, I don't think that sounds cool, and then someone tells me about the book, and they're like, oh, this is what it's about. And I'm like, oh, maybe if they called it The Many Deaths of Death, that might have piqued my interest. But who's this book for?
Me. Now I would say that this book is for people who really like character-driven stories, and especially character-driven stories that have a lot of ties that bind and that are very heartfelt and touching. There's a lot of life that happens in this book. And of course the premise of it, like, and I can totally sympathize with where you're coming from, Ash, as I've had like my own tussles with titles, and especially longer ones, but then I'm like up here listening to John Steinbeck books, and each chapter of every one of his books in Tortilla Flat is like over 30 words long. So I'm like, all right, well, I guess The Many Deaths of LAILA. like 25 words less or like 24 words less than that.
Hey, it
But
works, man. Nowadays, like it seems like that sells books, right? People are like looking for the next hot what do I say? The someone's killing the children. Like that's might be the hottest indie book right now. Some people are speculating it could turn into be the next Walking Dead.
yeah, that's the vibes that I get when I go to the store. That's literally what the LCS people tell me when I go there. So you're right. But this particular book, like, and especially if you like, you know, just like colors and line art that just kind of have a beat and kind of have a flow to them, I would absolutely say that this book is for you.
All right. Let me jump in with I don't have as many books to talk about as you.
Sure.
So it's nice to let you talk about these. But there is a book that I know this show is not about criticism, and I'm not really going to criticize, but it is a book that's kind of getting some notoriety right now, and we've both read it. And this is something that I actually haven't finished it because I'm struggling to finish it. Red Room by Ed Piskor. And I'm not here to like talk bad about the book, but you read it, you said it wasn't for you, and I was like, oh, that's too bad. I don't, and then I started reading it, and I immediately within 5 pages was like, oh, I totally get what Skip is saying. So the reason I want to talk about this book is because number one, we both read it, and number two, I think a lot of people don't know what this book is. Like, you're like, oh, it's Red Room. It's kind of people are talking about it. This is probably the most violent book I've ever read in my life. Like, it makes a book that I was actually a big proponent of, and still am, Die, 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 seem like a child's book. This is hardcore, over-the-top violence porn in many ways. I only want to talk about that because you may not know this. You may be a person. Had I known what this book was going to be about, I would not have bought it. Not on the merits of the book. I'm not here to say that the book is bad or anything. That's just not for me. So if you are a person looking for that type of content, if you're not opposed to really hardcore violent stuff, this may still be for you. I just kind of wanted to mention that because it's not obvious. I knew it was gonna be violent. I thought it was gonna be like Die, Die, Die violent and be like, but it's very extreme, very just. Anyways, I'm glad in some ways that books like this exist. It's very underground, indie, just very dark. The cover is everything. It's accurate. It's just not at all. It doesn't like tell you how extreme it is. It's true and understated. So see Rivers of Gore. Yes, when they say Rivers of Gore, they meant the Nile River, or the Amazon River, not the creek down the street. So, by all means, if this is something you're interested in, I'm very much a proponent of kind of underground comics and very indie stuff. Don't take this as any criticism of like the quality of the book itself, but I just want people to understand what they're getting into, because I don't think the book, I wasn't ready. Like, I guess that's all I want to do. Do you have anything to say about this book, Skip?
Yeah, I appreciate Ed Piskor. I appreciate his channel shares with Jim Rugg, the cartoonist kayfabe. I love their love and excitement for comics, and it helps keep my little comic fire stoked and fanned. But this particular book, as much as I appreciate like the craftsmanship within it, Piskor is meticulous. I enjoy how I'm a big character thing. like their own voices. When it goes to them, there is a unique, idiosyncratic way that they speak. It helps me like identify people better, and the personality of it's more potent for when all the characters get together and they share their individual personalities and throw those things into the pot of what the plot is. So all of those things are in place in this book. If there just wasn't so many bodies that were impaled and bleeding out and showing ribs, like if there just wasn't all that, I would really, really enjoy this book because there's even a plot in it and there's a through line and all of those things are there. Ed Piscor is such a student of comics that he understands, the components of this visual medium and storytelling. So I may continue to purchase the book because I would like to support him. I would like this to be successful for his next project, so that is able to happen.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna get the Love and Rockets cover, but I just can't. I probably can't like force myself to just kind of see those images very much past what I've already. Number one.
Yeah, and the difficulty thing for me on this book particularly wasn't necessarily the images. The images out of context would have just been gross, right? But I can somehow handle that. I mean, it's not that I necessarily want to look at a bunch of that. It just would have been really dark imagery. But the context that the imagery is put in, the whole context of a red room, right? It's a dark web place. It's basically death porn where people get murdered on a webcam in really disgusting, grotesque ways, and you have fans basically tipping, super chatting, if you will, the equivalent, to see their eye get gouged out, or and it's just, and the people you see on the cover here, you have like the madam who kind of runs the whole thing. The clown in the back is one of the torture killers, and it was just kind of vile, and I was like I said, I'm not criticizing the book and saying it's bad in any way. I just really wanted people to understand what the content was, because you may not be ready for it. I just certainly wasn't. And I still like Ed Piscor. I want to root for him to succeed. For everything that you said, I love his enthusiasm for comics, his knowledge of comics, and everything. I wish maybe in some way that I wasn't too squeamish to read this book. So, anyways, moving on. One of the other books that I've been reading is, if I can find it here, I'm real big into, I don't know if you're reading this one, Skip, is Geiger by Jeff Johns and our boy Gary Frank, the Doomsday Clock team. You guys may remember them from that. I've been really enjoying this book. The first issue started off the slowest. Issue 2 got better. And issue 3 seems to finally be like in fifth gear and cruising on the highway, and we're getting where we're going. And I am a sucker for apocalyptic type of Mad Max style fiction. That's one of my favorite settings. So you tell a story in that setting, I'm like, ooh. I also love superheroes, and so the fact that you were able to have that setting and then also make it a superhero book, that's a plus for me. I love Jeff Johns, Gary Frank art. I'm not the world's biggest Gary Frank fan, but he's a great artist, and I'm excited. There's a lot of world building in this, which is something I'm into. So if you like world building, that you're gonna like that. The third issue really just kind of started hooking me. I like that Jeff Johns tells like a long game type of story. So some people do like just want to pick up a book, read a story, and be done, and there's no fault in that. Some people don't necessarily want to read a long saga epic that's going to be written for the trade or the omnibus or whatever. I don't want decompressed books per se, but I do want a long story that I can just sit and every month pick up my copy and follow the story. And Geiger seems to be just that. Have you read any of these books, Skip?
Yeah, I'm current on Geiger, and I'm looking forward to a few days from now when we get the fourth issue.
Nice.
I very much have been enjoying it. I think I have a few different uh, covers, and I didn't start off that way. It was after I read issue number one that I was like, okay, yeah, I'm really into this. I was definitely skeptical about Jeff Johns not having like lore already established. So I was a little skeptical about that, but for me, he's been doing a fantastic job. Minus a few things I didn't care about so much, but I really enjoy the family aspect. I enjoy um, the character and hero himself, and I do like some of the flashbacks and how some of it is tied into the protagonist's health, as his particular health issue is something that definitely hits home for me and my family. Gary Frank, man, Gary freaking Frank. I mean, geez, like this thing looks like framed straight out of Mad Max. Gary Frank really is able to capture that. So I have increasingly been becoming a bigger and bigger fan of Gary Frank. But as far as I'm concerned, if we're just talking about like quality writing, quality art, quality book when you get it in your hands, I've got Geiger. I've got Geiger up there on my list.
All right. Very cool. Very cool. Any other books you're reading yourself that this past couple weeks worth talking about?
Yeah, I've been take a look here.
And while he's looking for the books, guys in chat, if you have any books worth talking about, please put them in there, and we'll try to mention them if we can. Like I said, we're always looking to hear about new great things that that are special to you or you think deserve more attention than they're getting. Let us know.
Definitely let us know. So, Stray Dogs 5 came out. That was a series that had gotten really hot, kind of out of nowhere, and again purchased it because Brad Simpson is the colorist. Purchased it to support Brad. We talked about it. I kind of read the story, was a little curious about it. Didn't really seem like it's for me, but as I read it more and more, definitely around issue 3, kind of pulled me in a little more, and it finally wrapped up, which was cool to see it wrap up. We kind of get the conclusion, but of course, because of the success of the book, and from what I understand, I guess it's been optioned. I don't remember if it was. I believe it's for a movie. I don't believe it's for a show, but I guess there's going to be some kind of one-off anthology stories about each dog from before they arrived at this house that they're all in the book. So I thought that was good. I also happened to go to LodiCon out here in Northern California, and Tony Fleeks is friends with some of my buddies that do comics. So I got to meet him and hang out with him. Super cool guy, and kind of talked about the book a little bit more and kind of process within it, which is it's always interesting. I mean, I feel like it's always interesting whether you end up liking it or not, knowing. So it was kind of cool to get a peek behind that and kind of see a little process of the book. And outside of Stray Dogs, Chariot 4 was Chariot issue number 4, Chariot by Brian Edward Hill, and I think it's Patricia Paytas is the not Paytas, but I can't pronounce her last name. Fantastic art. This issue really took the book back up for me and set it up for issue number 5, which should be the climax. It is a book very much inspired by Retrowave, which is like a more modern version of like old 80s music. So the sonics are a little bit better, but all of the 80s music tropes, kind of 80s pop music are there. So it's cool that Brian Edward Hill got into Retrowave and then created a comic that's literally a Retrowave book. And I didn't know. I was like, how are you gonna, like, without making it too 80s movie tropey. How are you going to make this happen? But it's the perfect blend of like the cool, fun stuff from the 80s and like good modern day solid storytelling. So that's been really good.
Awesome. Going back to Stray Dogs real quick, man,
Hmm.
I'm a little disappointed for myself on this because have you been seeing the reprint covers they've been doing for that book?
Yeah, I have a few of them.
They
Yeah.
are doing the movie cover thing that Deceased did. If
Hmm.
you guys remember that, they did like famous horror movie covers like It, and they just redesigned them to fit, well, Stray Dogs is doing the same thing. And I like Stray Dogs. It hasn't made it on my pull list just because I have so many other books. But I like it, and I saw these covers, and I was like, if I would have known that they were going to have these covers, I would have got it, because they did covers for some of my... Dude, they have an Evil Dead cover, which, of course, as Ash, I was like... They have my favorite horror movie of all time, The Thing. They did a Thing cover. There was a couple others that I saw that I'm not recalling off the top of my head, but I was like... And the way that they do it, incorporating the cartoon dogs... Because, these dogs are all drawn like Don Bluth, if you know who that is. All Dogs Go to Heaven. That style of art, which, let's see if I can bring the covers back up here. Yeah, there we go. It's a very dark murder mystery book, but it's juxtaposed with these animals that are drawn, and our psychology just tells us that, these are like children's cartoons. But this is not, and it's a neat mix, I think. Doing that on the covers, which are these iconic covers, like they did the original. What is it? The original. I'm having a Biden moment. Please forgive me. The Friday the 13th cover, movie poster.
That was my favorite one.
Yeah, that was so good.
Yeah.
And so, but they're hard to find. I'm like, I gotta get these. So. Man, I'm like, darn it, Image, if I would only known you were going to do this. But I guess that's part of the collectability thing is now people, if you want them, you got to go try to find them. And it's kind of a double-edged sword, but maybe I'll find these books. I think you were also reading another really kind of gaining popularity. A lot of people seem to be excited about Silver Coin. Is that book still going good for you?
Yeah. Still on Silver Coin. Read that today. It's interesting. To me, still the very first issue was the best issue, and I may be a little biased because I'm a musician, and but it also was Chip Zdarsky, and Chip Zdarsky is he is in his groove right now. But from there, like if you took that as the book to kind of establish what the rest of the books may be like, it doesn't exactly work out like that, but the through line of the Silver Coin is still very much there. So what I continue to like about the book, like very much, is kind of like the despair. Like once this coin gets involved, it's not always like things start off good for you and then go bad. Like things can just only go really, really bad. But I'm enjoying the art from Michael Walsh. It's very noir, very dark, very black. I like his line weight is really, really good, and the colors as well. Very good visual storyteller. I'm curious. I definitely want to read the next issue, issue number 4, Jeff Lemire, because that one's more set in the future, so that's going to be interesting. But I wouldn't say that I love the book, but I will say that I can understand why people are really enjoying it. And, I don't always like to point the finger to say someone's ripping off so-and-so, someone's ripping off so-and-so, but it does very much feel like Ice Cream Man inspired. But I just don't feel like it has the exact same creative punch, because Ice Cream Man, every different little creative way that W. Maxwell Prince decides to approach an issue, he hits it 170%. But it's also always the same writer. All these have had different writers. But I like that the visual style is kind of what gives it that continuous feel. And you could tell that Michael Walsh is plotting the story with the writers, because I still do very much feel like his influence on the book. So if you're into horror, it's funny because I'm not like this big horror guy, but more and more horror books keep popping up.
It's just the only kind of books you read, Skip. Come on.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, I'm in denial. Apparently, I'm a big horror fan. I just don't want to accept it. But Silver Coin is definitely worth checking out. Issue number 1 went into reprint, so even if you can grab yourself a reprint, that is a freaking really cool issue. And then hopefully you like it enough to continue to support Michael Walsh.
So is this, because I'm totally ignorant on this book, other than people telling me it's good and a few little things. Is this book an anthology? How is it? Does the story continue from issue to issue? I'm a little confused on the concept.
The only thing that is continuous through the book is the silver coin appearing in the stories itself. So the silver coin doesn't always leave off where you last found it. So, that's, I would say it is more anthology style. I would say that Ice Cream Man has more continuity.
So this would be a book then you could pick up at any issue. Like if you like, oh, this sounds neat, and you jumped in on issue 4, you don't need to know what happens in issues 1, 2, and 3. They may be thematically linked, but not narratively.
Yeah, I would agree. Yes,
okay.
Is true. You can pick it up on any issue.
That's cool, because I think a lot of people, especially with indie comics, I think one of the big drawbacks is this sort of serialized epic saga storytelling, which I love. But if you don't get on the ground floor, if you jump on a book and you're like, oh, they already have 50 issues, it feels like climbing a mountain. You're like, oh, I got to go back and get all these trades and catch up so I can read, and follow the storyline. And a lot of people are like, eh. And I think that's really holding indies back, because they start to get further in the numbers and they just can't carry the audience anymore because they're not getting new readers for that reason. Like old school, Spider-Man was, back in the Silver Age, it was just designed, just pick up an issue and see what Spider-Man's doing. You don't need to care what happened before. So that's pretty cool. People should know that. I think if this sounds interesting, yeah, you can just grab yourself an issue, maybe just a certain writer, like I'm a Jeff Lemire fan, so maybe I just might pick up the Lemire issue and read it.
Absolutely. You could completely do that, and hopefully it'll be enjoyable to you. I'm going to throw one more in here and I'm going to make it quick. It's because technically it's not an indie book, but it very much is. We weren't prepared for this, but I found an old series from the 80s from DC called Wasteland. That it's like there's no DC characters in it, like at all. Like they just published it this way because I think Joe Ostrander wanted to like just do a book like this. But freaking, it has one of my favorite stories that I've ever read in comics in it. It's a bunch of little tiny small anthology stories. I've only read issue number 1, but the first story in issue number 1 was freaking awesome, and I am so excited to read. I got the whole series. It didn't run for very long. I think it ended up only being 12 issues, but it is a indie style comic book that DC happened to publish, and I'm excited to read the rest of it. So if y'all want some more, if you're looking for back issues that are in the indie vein, if you find Wasteland, take a look at it because it's pretty damn cool.
All right, so Skip may have just inadvertently introduced a new segment for back issue indies. So I found it on Comixology. I didn't know what it was, but when I heard the term Wasteland, it piqued my interest. Was this a Vertigo book? No, this is Oni. Am I looking at the right one?
Let me take a look. This one was published by DC.
All right, maybe I pulled up.
Wasteland, one word.
Oh, in the 80s. Okay.
Yep, in the 80s, yeah. So it'll look cool.
There we go. Okay, so this is the one that'll pop up on your screen in a minute, not the Oni Press one. This is very interesting. I've never heard of this book. And who is this book for? Who is this going to appeal to?
This is going to appeal to my friends that grew up watching The Twilight Zone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Or if you didn't grow up watching The Twilight Zone, if you're a little younger and you've seen Altered Carbon, it's totally in the vein of something like Altered Carbon.
All right. Very, very good. Some of the audience here is mentioning some books. I need to catch up on those. I asked a question I didn't follow through. Nalo seems really big on ENIAC from Bad Idea and That Texas Blood from Image. Unfortunately, ENIAC is near impossible to find. So if you get copies of those, good luck to you and congratulations. That is written by one of my favorite writers in Robert Venditti. And I think, no, that's the Matt Kent. Am I mixing him up?
Yep, you got it. That's Matt Kent.
Matt Kent. Well, another one of my favorite writers. Tankers is, I flip-flop those two guys. But Matt Kent is another fantastic writer. I wish I could find these books. I can't, so I'm jealous of those who do. That Texas Blood is a book that I've been wanting to check out because it's got Sean Phillips' son on the book. And Skip, you've been responsible for getting me into the crime noir type of stuff, whereas before I was like, I don't really care about that's not for me. Like, I'm not into that. I want superhero comics or sci-fi comics, and now that I'm into criminal, I'm like, give me more, give me all the crime stuff.
Yeah.
Let's see. Ryuk224 says he knows that Ash hated Radiant Black, which is true. He says it picks up after issue 3, so he's apparently really liking it enough to recommend it. And Nalo also wants to recommend John Carpenter's Tales of Science Fiction Hell. So I'm a big John Carpenter fan. I think I'm going to try to catch that sort of stuff in the trades. But that sounds interesting. Silver Coin has got me intrigued very much. Let's see if anyone else is... I don't see any more recommendations at the moment. So my final book that I wanted to talk about before we move on to our feature is a book that a lot of people aren't reading, and it's unfortunate. And I think the reason why they're not reading it is because of the venue. It's a digital-only book on Comixology. It's a Comixology original called Snow Angels. We were speaking about Jeff Lemire. He's the author of this book. The art is by Jacques, who is probably a love or hater artist. I think people who love Jacques love Jacques. Others are just like, whatever. Regardless, in my opinion, this book is so good, I don't care. I do like Jacques covers, and the cover for issue 1, I think, is very evocative. It made me want to read the book. That in the title or the lead author. This is a book that is a post-apocalyptic horror story, a horror thriller, if you will. And when I say horror thriller, think in terms of movies like Terminator or the second Aliens film, where it's kind of got some horror scares, but it's more on the thrill ride aspects than the deep horror aspects. Although some of that's here. In this book, it's about a father and his 2 young daughters who are like age 12 and 10. And they live in this world that's a snowy, just think of like Hoth. It's just a snow world. And they live in this trench. And apparently, according to their knowledge, the trench it goes on forever. And if you go out of the trench, you'll die because the world is too harsh. And they have 3 rules in their world. One is don't ever leave the trench. The trench goes on forever. And I forget what the third one is, but it's a big part of the book. And something horrific kind of happens that causes lots of murder, basically causes the dad and the daughters to be alone and on the run from this horrific monster that's chasing after them. and they can't go anywhere. There's just a trench. Like, imagine something's chasing you. You can't go off and hide in the wilderness or do like, you just have this straight trench. It's very much primitive times. This is a post-apocalyptic time. So you can see on the cover here, like, they just have a bow and arrow, like, and what I love about this book, aside from the setting, like I said, I'm tied to these post-apocalyptic things, is the pacing. This is one of the first comic books where when I was reading it, I was feeling that white knuckle experience, like, just like, oh, what's going to happen? And that's difficult to do in comics, in my opinion. Maybe it's just because I haven't seen it happen very much. And I was very, very much into the tense pacing. And that's what Lemire does here, is he just keeps it on track. You're never going to get bored. And every issue is a cliffhanger of like, oh, now what's going to happen? And then you read the next issue, and he doesn't drag things out. He's not one of those people that sets up all these questions and then doesn't answer them. The next issue will answer now what's going to happen, but then he manages to build a different cliffhanger, and you're like, oh no, now what's going to happen? And they did this thing that I don't like. They're dividing it into seasons. So after issue 4 was the end of the arc, and then issue 5 has been renamed to season 2, issue 1. That's not my cup of tea, but whatever. That's out here. If you have Comixology Unlimited, you can read these 100% free as they come out, or you can still purchase them without a membership for $2.99, which is cheaper than new other comics if you don't mind the digital experience. And I highly recommend this. So there you have it. Have you had a chance to check these books out by chance, Skip?
I haven't. I saw them on the Comixology Originals because they have like a banner for it when you go into the app. I did hang out on a stream where you were reading through some of it.
Yeah.
And I do agree about the pacing and on all of that. It's Lemire, man, I feel like that's one of his talents. When he cares to focus on it, he can really keep the pulse on some pacing and make it that, next panel, next page, type of experience. So, yeah, I mean, father-daughter story. It's easy for me to get behind.
Right.
So.
he does. He got these kids. You instantly care for these kids. And they each have their own unique voices. To me, they feel very authentic. I mean, it feels like a 12 and a 10-year-old, how they should be. And then, of course, part of the horror is like, without their dad, they rely on their dad. So he's like, oh man, what happens at the end of the 4th issue, by the way, major cliffhanger, where season 2 goes is just crazy. The way he keeps escalating the story and just adding new things into it. And you're just like, what? I'm just hooked. Like I literally cannot wait for the next issue. When it comes out, like it's one of the first things I read. I'm that into this. I hope, I know Comixology is a digital only thing. I would love to see these put into physical trades to have, because this is a book every issue I get more and more in love with it.
Absolutely. I hope it does come out in that format. I hope it it goes out too. We need, again, more spotlight on good indie comics. And I don't know when Jeff Lemire sleeps, but he sure does make a lot of comics, that's for sure.
All right, guys. The main event tonight, what we're talking about, we're geeking out about one of our favorite new titles that's come out in 2021, and that is UltraMega. It is a book that's published by Image. It's a creator-owned book, and it is. It took me by complete surprise. I am blown away by this book. We talked earlier about like certain things not being your cup of tea. Like you were saying, you weren't really a horror guy. I'm not really a kaiju, Ultraman type guy. I like Godzilla movies. I think, I grew up as a kid with those. I think I like them for different reasons and, not because I just like giant monsters. I do happen to really love Pacific Rim, the first Pacific Rim movie, is one of my favorite movies. But it's not because of the material. It's because I think it was just really well executed. UltraMega turns out to be, for me, the same thing. I didn't know it. I came across it like a month or two late, and I had to go track down back issues, which weren't easy because of the small print runs. But this book is fantastic. I spent today reading issues 3 and 4 over again, and it was just as good the second time. I was catching details that I missed. I am literally, I want to just gush about this book. I am so in love with every aspect. I love the art. I love the writing. It is written and drawn by this guy, James Harren. And like what you were talking about with Compass, I think it was, James is not an accomplished writer. In fact, I don't think he's ever written a comic before. This is his first one. And it comes off very raw in many ways because of that. He doesn't have that formal training on this is how you properly do this or that. But he certainly does have a gut instinct that is like on target. And I don't care. Like I think sometimes it's better to not be so conforming to the rules. Like this is follow this structure, because sometimes things can turn out to feel very paint by numbers. And UltraMega does not feel like paint by numbers, but it does feel like it's written by someone who has a love of many different genres and different stories. You can feel influences all over the place. Like, oh yeah, he must be a fan of this movie here or that. And I like I said, I'm reading it. I was rereading it today just to kind of.
And on the topic of world building, that's one of the things that this book does the best. All of the structures, all of the segments and sections of the city, and the city is almost the terrain is a character within itself in this particular book. And then if you do take the characters and you take the heroic aspects of it, you take some of the deeper cosmic lore that even gets built throughout the book, you get a lot of bang for your buck in this particular book. And I really love, we're talking about James Harren and his writing, as well as his illustrations. And then you take, again, Dave Stewart, who I talked about earlier when we were speaking about the vinyl book. You take his colors and put them with James's lines, and it's just like fantastically rendered. It's a book that you pick up and you look, and it's got a style all of its own. So it's cool to see that though James is finding his way with writing, and I like the raw feel of it. I agree with Ash, but what he's done with the visual identity of this book, you pick it up and you can't just go and look on the rack and find another book that just feels like UltraMega. If you want UltraMega feel, there's only one place to get it.
Yeah, absolutely. There is nothing like this book, which is kind of unfortunate, because for me, I'm like, oh, now I'm starting to see, oh, that's a kaiju book? I wonder what, no, and I just have to tell myself, no, it's not going to be like this, Ash. It's like, you're like, oh, but that's okay. I'm just glad that this exists. Like I said, I am so in love with this. I hope this book gets the deluxe primo hardcover treatment that a lot of the Image books get, like Criminal and East of West, because I could just sit there and flip through the art on this. Every page, I'm in like I said, I will gush about this book. It is not just your average pretty good read. Like, this to me is something I'm just a huge fan of. Let's get on with talking about it.
Absolutely. So with issue number 3, we left off in the place where Noah, who is the protagonist, had kind of been apprehended. He was sold out by his people. And from there, he was, kind of knocked out and then thrown on this truck on the way to this place, which is called the Coliseum. So that's where we catch up with him at. On the flip side, on the kaiju side of things, we came into contact with this very small being, and it seems like it was a flashback from the past, and he catches up to this very white, very tall looking type being, and he was referring to that being as like mother. And all the mother tells him is that she's a queen and she needs an army, and was speaking down to the being, the little tiny kaiju, basically as if he is not fit for the task at hand. But if he wants to prove himself to mother, then he needs to grow in stature and get also help her build an army. So after that, we get back with Noah. He's in a room with a few other people. All of them are being readied for the Coliseum. They're going to get sent out to slaughter. One of them is all gung-ho and is like, hey, get behind me. I'll show you the way, kid. The other one is like, that dude doesn't know what he's talking about. I got my way out of this. And slits his throat to kill himself. So that way he doesn't have to go out there and die, within an audience of the Coliseum. We also get a flashback of one of the kaiju's right-hand men. He, was very dedicated to, the kaiju king, but something happened to him. He ended up being dispatched, and they threw him out like he was like yesterday's trash. So he ended up also being carted to the city and in place of the Coliseum, just by slightly different means. But now everybody is suited up, the gates are open, and everyone gets thrown out into the front of the Coliseum. What's interesting is it is very kaiju or tokusatsu meta, with like a small, tiny rendition of the city being made in the middle of the Coliseum, which is also cool because you see the renderings of the old, like decayed and decrepit buildings in the back falling apart, and all of the people that get thrown out into the Coliseum, they have like tiny little kaiju costumes on, so that's pretty interesting. But the monsters are thrown out there, and the monsters get to pick who they want first. They end up one of the like most weak looking monsters picks the dude that was all gung-ho. He grabs some weapon and is active. He's going to fight, but he just gets like literally chomped by the monster and then farted out like immediately, all of his bones and all of that stuff. So of course it freaks out all the rest of the kaiju fighters. And as they start to come and attack the rest of them that are there, by some luck, Noah kind of throws like a javelin at one of them and gets the upper hand. He kills one of them that was behind it, goes and does a little bit of work to the other ones, and he's starting to take these things out one by one. But when the biggest and baddest one shows up, there's a little tiny eyeball thing, and that's the thing that kind of helps Noah find a way to get out of the city. So they find a way out, and as they're just about to make their escape, Noah decides that the guy, the little kaiju right-hand man guy that just gets left there to die, he's going to take, even though that dude was trying to kill him before, he's going to take him with him as they escape. So he lowers that dude down, and right as he's about to make his own escape, one of the kaiju monsters comes up behind him, grabs at him, and he tries to kick him off, but the dude ends up taking a chomp at him and takes a swipe at him, kind of takes a little chunk out of him right in the middle, and he ends up falling all the way down the thing. And then once he comes to, we see the little eyeball that is a part of the UltraMega, and we see Noah on the ground, and he is in really bad condition, bleeding out. And that was the end of issue number 3. Ash.
Wow, what an issue.
Us.
What an issue. This one was just jam-packed. If you've been following the storyline, this little guy here, that's the little mini kaiju guy, is the son from the original that killed the original, well, not the first UltraMega on Earth, whose name I'm forgetting at the moment, who's Noah's father. And the thing about it is, in this lore, the kaiju sort of somehow get their power from the UltraMegas. It's like this weird virus that humans can get infected with, and when an UltraMega is near, it causes them to sort of be triggered and turn into the big kaiju monster. But since they killed the UltraMegas, all the kaiju have kind of shrunk back down to human size. They still retain their monster kaiju form. And this woman here in the white, she's the wife of or the ex-wife, I should say, of the original guy from the first story. If you remember, he left her because he could sense, all the UltraMegas can sense when there's a kaiju, and he sensed she was pregnant with his kid, and he didn't, so he left. So thinking, if I'm not near, she won't ever trigger it. And there's a whole story in that. If you haven't read this up to this point, we're spoiling so much for you. I feel really bad. Please, hopefully you're following along. So he's kind of a little simpering idiot child, and this is very trope. Like I said, this whole book feels like it's just pulled from other pieces. I don't think this is reinventing the wheel in any way. It's just reusing parts and putting them together in different ways. And this is the trope of the poor child. It reminds me very much of Arthurian mythos of Morgana and Mordred, and it's like, oh, my little child, and he's sort of the de facto ruling kaiju because of who he is, not necessarily because he's awesome. The battle scene in the gladiatorial arena was awesome. Kind of reminded me of Gladiator when they walk in for the first time and everyone's cheering and they're just like looking around going, oh my God. But true to form, you're like, I feel like I've seen this before, and it does not play out. The guy's like, stick next to me. The guy who would be Gladiator, he's like, I know how to fight. There's so much little detail here that you really have to just read for yourself to kind of get, because we could be here all day going panel by panel. I love that they introduce like the 3 kaiju. It's like pick your who you're gonna fight, and like the first 2 are just this fearsome beast, Strax and Rip Bash and Boosh. And then it's like this guy's like, I pick him. Boosh, like yeah, he's gonna get the easy guy, and of course that's just not how it works, and he gets digested. Like the Boosh apparently pukes out his stomach and encases him, and then it's gross, but it's kind of darkly humorous in the same way. And I just like the art. Like you could see Noah just looking like, I'm about to die, and the guy behind him is just puking because, of course, fear and disgust and everything. And then they interpret his puking as he said Strax. So they're like, so Strax is like leaps in to go fight, and Noah's just still staring in shock. The art in this book, you can flip through it and just look at the art, not even read what's happening, and you can kind of follow what's going on. And then you get some really cool heroic moments, like the eyeball. This is the eye that was pulled out of the original UltraMega that he pulled out, and he shot it down on the ground and said, we need to find another hero, because he knew he was going to die. And that thing's just been hiding underground, and this is the thing that bonds with humanity and turns them into UltraMegas. And he's just like, oh, what a strong warrior spirit. And he just admires this kid because, he's got no powers or whatever, but he's got this strong spirit, and he fights off and manages to beat the kaiju. It's a great action scene, really well choreographed. You get a sense of like exactly everything that's happening, where he's throwing the spear and the kaiju like kind of dodges, like, but it wasn't meant for him. It gets Boosh, and he puked out his little digestive acids all come out and burn the guy, and you just follow this fight, and I just love it. Part of comics, not every comic needs to be an action comic. We've talked about horror books, we've talked about drama books, you can even have slice of life books, but when you are reading an action book, it's important that it does the action well. And you can follow every bit of it here. The art is great, the coloring is eye-popping. I literally have nothing bad to say about this book, even if I wanted to. I'd love this character that's the main kaiju. We talked about him. He's the simpering little idiot who's in charge, who killed Noah's father. And he just, like, he can't even walk around on his own feet because he's just this, fat, grotesque thing. And he's got to be flown around by the other kaiju. Mom shows up and starts berating him again or whatever. And that allows Noah to get away. We get another cool fight scene showing Noah's spirit as they get away. And, in other books, we've seen so many times the hero gets away. You're like, oh, cool, look at he fought away. Look how bravely he fought. But here we'd see, nope, instead, the kaiju grabs him and rips out a chunk of his torso. And then he falls down. And I don't know. I love the writing in this, the dialogue where the eyeball is just like, good news, warrior. Your sycophant is safe. Bad news, you are dying. Just like looking at him, he's just like splurt, like blood, just like, and it's like, that's the end of the issue. And immediately I'm like, where's this going to go? Holy shit. Am I missing anything? Is there something? There's so much to talk about this book, Skip.
No, there is. I mean, that is a lot of it. Like, there's a lot of character, within the book that's set up within the tone of the book. So that dark humor is a part of it. I talked earlier about how, it's kind of tough for me to see so much gore, but I don't feel this is like riding the line of gratuitous for me. I do feel like a lot of it complements the story and it's there for the story's sake more than it is just because someone, because James wants to see, bones go through skin or whatever. So, the dark humor is a part of it. And then also the other parts of it are for the sacrifice, in Impact, we do see, the hero sacrifice him. He literally sacrificed his well-being for this person that tried to kill him before, before his people had sold him out. So there's a cost, and that's one of the biggest things and themes in like kaiju stories and books. Buildings get destroyed. There's a cost to these actions. Bodies get mangled and destroyed. Lives are destroyed. There's a cost to all of these things occurring. And since there is a cost, we are tied to that transaction that much more. People sacrificing things and people not being able to get out of these situations scot-free. So I think it grounds the story a little bit more for us, even within, stories of big old, monsters and, and humans who get, big old monster, behemoth style power, because there is loss within the book and it's right there in front of us. We can see what these heroic decisions cost these protagonists, and it gives us more of an investment into the characters as we follow them through the story.
For sure. Hopefully you guys are enjoying this fantastic book and getting to follow along with us. Marania makes a comment about the eyeball. She says an eyeball and legs is called a grillos, which is, I guess, an artistic thing. I know grillos is a Greek term when you combine weird anatomy together, typically like putting the head of a human on a goat's body or something such like that. It's like a bizarre combination. So that's, I guess, more PSA. Yeah, Marania, I think, just mentioned that too in the comments. Are any of you guys listening in? Are you guys following this book? Are you in love with it as much as we are? That's what I want to know. How did this book leave you feeling when you got to the end of it?
I had to know what was going to be the next thing. We've already seen people die off before in this book, so we don't. That's part of things costing. And so we get to this point, and I don't know about you, Ash, but I realistically was at the point I was like, I can't just act like this kid's just going to make it and we're just going to continue the story with like he's just going to pop up and be okay with the next issue. We've already seen people. I mean, the first issue we were following people, and I thought those were going to be the people that we followed, and they died. So, there's no guarantee that he's just going to be okay. I really did have to think about that and have a lot of uncertainty until we got to issue 4. And I can't always say that, in books and in comics has the stigma, of course, that death doesn't mean anything and they'll just be back, in a few issues or in a few months or something like that. But in this particular story, that's not how James set up this world. People die, they don't always come back, and you don't know if he's going to be good for the next issue. So that's how I was feeling. I was very uncertain, and it was a genuine uncertainty. So that had me set up very well to be excited for the next issue and figure out, find out what was going to happen. But what about you, Ash? How did the end of issue 3 leave you?
A little bit like you. I definitely had that uncertainty, and I definitely praise the book for that, for leaving me kind of off balance and not going, he'll be fine. We do that all the time, right? We read comics and it's like, oh no, Spider-Man's in a precarious position. Is he going to die? Find out next month. You're like, he's not going to die. Like, like modern comics is all about more finding out how the hero wins rather than will he win. In this book, it's not the case. You read the first issue and the 3 UltraMegas and you think, they just get destroyed. And they're all gone. And it's pretty crazy. And James Harren, whether skillfully or instinctually or just, by random happenstance, did something really wonderful, I think, in making this so you don't know. Like, no one is safe in this book. He's like, I'll just kill anybody. On the other hand, when I got to the end of this book, I was a little bit dismayed because I was like, really? I loved all the characters, like the first book, and then they're all dead. So we move on to these other characters, and are we just gonna say this guy's dead now? We're gonna move on to another character. Part of me went that direction.
Okay.
And again, it's just because I don't know if maybe I'm jaded or cynical or what, but I needn't worry. The book has been handled so well, and this was all for getting us to, I guess, other places. And this book, like I said, in hindsight, now I've read all 4 issues. I can look back and go, all of these were great. Like, they set me up to be able to enjoy and not know where it was going and constantly be surprised. And that's a really good thing.
Absolutely, I would agree. On to issue 4, shall we go?
Issue 4.
4. All right. Started out in space, and we get a little bit of kind of like the team up with that Grillo and what looks to be I took this as a younger Noah, but I don't know that we ever truly got
this was Noah's spirit.
Noah's spirit. Okay. That makes a lot more sense.
His spirit follows him into this other realm, because you can see his dead body lying, and he says, leave that dying animal you call that your life. Join me. Leave this world and trash and useless pain. And so his spirit kind of gets up and follows him.
That makes me
appreciate
That's how I
interpreted
even
it
more.
Yeah.
No, I can definitely looking at having the pages out while I look at that, I can see the same thing. So from there we get basically the journey of all of the different kaiju, like the major kaijus, Kaiju Queen and Kaiju King, all kind of going to a meeting, like a point of destination for them all to confer and decide how they're going to deal, with the emerging UltraMega that may be coming back to being, and even just how they're going to deal, with kind of some of their kaiju plans that they have as the spiritual journey continues for Noah and the little UltraMega eyeball thing. We get all the way through that until we there's a little bit of they actually go to a place where they see the last main UltraMega, and the eyeball is disappointed to kind of see the UltraMega in such a state, but
this is if I may, I apologize.
Mm-hmm. Go right
This
ahead.
is the sort of the all-father UltraMega. His name is Atom UltraMega. So
Yes, ate
apparently
some
he's
UltraMega.
apparently the lord of all the Ultra, like the creator, if you will. I guess that's how I took it from the story.
Almost like the Odin of the UltraMega.
Kind of, yeah.
Um, so he was in a terrible state. Obviously, looked like someone had gotten there and done damage to him before. But he gives them some trinkets and tells them to get out of here, as he kind of, as he's getting ready to explode and try to dispatch the enemies that have kind of found them out where they're at, where they are. They make a mad dash back to the portal that kind of got them in that spirit realm place. The rest of those other Ultra Mega or the other kaiju are still getting to that place where they will have their little conference. But we get back to the actual realm, and the little eyeball dude is, kind of asking Noah, like, hey, are you ready to bond? Can you do this, warrior? Are you ready to let go of, what is failing you, and and turn it to something more? And I like how he asks him, like, hey, do I get to pick the color? and like the little eyeball thing just starts laughing at him as he starts consuming Noah's dying body to merge with him. And I like, there's a little panel there that just says, "Will be beautiful." Noah just says, "Oh crap," because he knows it's begun. But I thought that was a cool little heartwarming part with some good levity in it. But there's this big kaiju beast that has kind of shown up on the scene and starts causing some destruction. It is not part of the enemy kaiju, and it's kind of actually going against them, and they're trying to the kaiju bosses are trying to find out how they're going to deal with it. When out of nowhere, we got Ultra Mega in full form lands. Is much smaller than all of those kaiju beasts that it's going up against, but fights mightily all the same. Of course, takes some damage as the destruction of the city is occurring. Gets his head kind of like engulfed inside of the mouth of one of these kaijus, and the thing even pokes him in the eye. Looks like he kind of poisoned him and it was kind of numbing him, but he gets all of them off of him, and we see that inside, like that big monster kaiju, it was his friend. I think her name was Beth. I don't remember particularly, but at some point in time, the kaiju earlier on, the kaiju that had kind of like apprehended her and had taken her captive as well. She gets the jump on him with this phaser gun, and then kind of gets him under her control in order to control that big old robot kaiju thing that had helped Noah and kind of got some of the other beasts off of him. But that robot thing opens up and spits out his friend. It looks like he had begun to take back over, and now he's starting to break out of the robot machine. He was fighting Noah. Noah gets his arm cut off again, because this thing is like Star Wars. Someone has to lose a limb.
Yeah.
And and then ultimately he shoots his arm off, and that's what got wedged in the throat of that kaiju. Does a flipping motion and is able to rip off the thing's head and totally decapitates it, Mortal Kombat style. And the blood floods the city yet again, so another blood flood. But now Noah, with his arm missing, is sitting there with his good friend, and they're just trying to figure out, like kind of what's going to happen next. And they go around the corner because they hear something, and it was the floating head that we saw at the very beginning of the book. The head has landed, and we see that it's Noah's dad, still within the kaiju head mask type thing. And he says, "Oh my God, it's been so long. You didn't bond with that thing, did you?" And it's too late. Noah's just sitting there like, "You're not asking me this now after I've bonded with this thing, are you?" And that is the end of issue number 4.
Yeah. So this just leaves you again in another like, what the? So there's a lot here, like a lot of little details that I respect Harren keeping. Like you pointed out in the beginning, I had missed this on the first pass. This floating head right here, there it is. But it's just the way it's done. It's like Earth, present day. We just see some debris in space and floating head. You're like, okay, moving on. And it's those little details like that you don't realize that they matter. It's not just I'm just drawing something to fill panel. I love that about this book. I think it's very underrated thing. Like here we see in the beginning this little mouse chewing on his toe, on Noah's toe. That's a really big deal because later in the book, after they do the whole spirit realm thing and they come back and he gives the eyeball gives a speech. Where is it here? Oh dang it! I'm losing control. My computer's lagging. He gives this speech and he's like, and it's all really small text. You can't even read it. So it's not really that important until you get to the part where he's like, and you still will fight. Who's going to win this day, warrior? You or him? And he's talking about the rat, like the rat's like literally standing on his chest, eating his bowels, just like nom, nom, nom. And he even says like nom. And Noah's looking at him. Atum will not have died in vain. I propose we attempt to bond ourselves without his guidance. And he's just like, he's just dying. What do you say? Will you allow yourself to dissolve into this hill of garbage, to vanish at the bottom of the hole? And I just love this rousing speech as Noah's just like, and you said it great too. It's just like, do I get to choose the color? Because it was never really a question. But here, another thing I missed on the first pass was the laughing. The eyeball's just like, just like, this is like Joker laugh, like, like just maniacal, crazy laughing. And you're like, why is that? What is going on? And then when you get to the end of the book and his dad's head is like, you didn't bond with that thing, did you? At that point, you're like, wait a second. Maybe these UltraMega things aren't so benevolent as we were led to believe. Maybe it's not so cut and dry, straightforward. UltraMega's good, kaiju evil. And they hint at that in the book too, about how these are like these two, almost like two different species locked in, eternal combat with each other. I find that very interesting. Other details like Beth is one of Noah's friends who got kidnapped by the kaiju. She can build technology. And since the kaiju son here, that's who this little guy is. Sometimes he's hard to recognize because he's got this head that pops out of his top. It's the skull head. And sometimes it's not there because it's inside his body and he looks different. But it's the son from the mother brood. I'll just call her the brood mother. He's the one that killed the first UltraMega. Well, he's wants to be the best. He wants to be the top dog kaiju. And he's small here because there are no other UltraMegas. So he has this girl build him his own Titan mech. And that's why that thing's running around. But she, as we saw, got the upper hand on him and zodded him. But unfortunately, when Noah comes back in UltraMega form, it triggers all the kaijus to start growing. And they're all, you can see them here. They're like, oh, yay, we ascend. And they're like, yay, it's time to kill things again. And that's the side effect. Like if the UltraMega weren't here, the kaiju wouldn't be here. It's that sort of chicken and the egg type thing. And I love that when he confronts the Titan, we get a cool battle, this is another great battle. It's just, how come the absurdity that it's like an exercise bike powers the Titan. I don't know about you, Skip, but I found that to be totally funny. Like I'm just
absolutely.
It's so cool, like and bizarre. Like what? She's like huff, 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 like to pedal this thing. You're like what?
Absolutely. James taking some of the absurdity of like the world that he's built and like infusing humor, into the perfect moments. That's one thing that I do like. His humor, his comedic timing in this book has not been that of someone who's writing for the first time. I can say that. Right.
And so, when Noah shows up and he's just like, oh, thank you. Da, 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 da. Too late. The sun kaiju starts growing and he's just like, haha. And he's laughing because he's now big again. And, we saw what happened. He made mincemeat of his dad, and we get this fight. But Noah is crafty, and we get the really cool battle. It was climactic. I love the fact that we had that first issue, because it really sets up just how dangerous the sun kaiju is. And the fact that Noah's able to take him down sets up for us like, oh, Noah's strong, and he wins this fight, which I did not know what was going to happen for all the reasons we talked about before. Here we are, looking at his hands missing. He shot off his hand in order to win the fight. And he's talking to Beth, and we get this, this sort of like, oh, it's all over. And then this last epilogue page with the head sets you up for the next story arc. And I have no idea where it's going to go. I presume it's going to go into something about how the UltraMegas aren't the great things that we thought maybe. Obviously, there's something wrong because the scene. What do you think that's leading to?
I'm stuck between the UltraMegas not being altruistic or not being the good guys, in between that and just the father going through so much and just not wanting that for his child.
Oh, yeah, good point. Maybe it's just he's like, oh no, I don't want you to have to become me.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I love this book. The only downside of this book, and for any fan, I think you're all going to feel the same, this book is on hiatus until 2022. So we're only getting these 4 issues this year. And I'm like, no. it's like end of Star Wars Episode 3 Vader, like, no. If you couldn't tell already, I love this book. And again, I mean, we blasted through. These issues are 40 plus pages each. They're thick issues. If you see them physically in the store, they're not staple bound. They are very thick. We just blasted through all the details. Really, the enjoyment of this is not going to come from us talking about it. It's going to come from you reading it. Did you have any favorite moments in this particular issue?
In this one, my favorite moment was the one that I talked about when he was like when he was dying, still and trying to make the choice, decide if he's going to bond with the little eyeball guy, the Grillos thing, and he asks, and he is like, he is a young, teenagerish age kid, like aesthetics.
Yeah,
I'm totally, I've got 2 teenagers. They're all into aesthetics right now. I said the word and they're like, Dad, how do you know what aesthetics is?
I love how kids think that everything was invented during their lifetime.
Right.
That's a total kid thing. Like, how do you know this? It's like, there was a world before you were born. I know.
Right. Believe it or not. So, for him to have that question, you continue to talk about, or point out like, hey, that is how a, younger, kid thinks or would act, from the Snow Angels book. And I think this was one of those innocent moments, and, the response of the eyeball thing, will be beautiful, like just, reassuring him far beyond what the kid can understand. And on into the glory that that they will have in the midst of the battles to defend the honor of the UltraMega, and also the friends and the family that Noah has left. That was definitely my favorite moment. What about yours?
That was one of my favorite moments for sure. I do love that scene. I think for me it was I really like the whole spirit journey. When they take off, I love this first scene when they come through the gate, and it's the Grillos thing. the eyeball, and they're like, "Yay, our father HM UltraMega awaits," and you can see the spirit boy, and it just, oh, they're going on. They're gonna get the answers they need, and the scene is broken up into parts. But when they show up, and it's like something's wrong, and when they actually get to Atom, and you can see like there's eggs in his body, and I remember getting to this part, and I was like, did UltraMega get infected by the kaiju? Like, is this what's happening here? Are we gonna get UltraMega kaiju? And then there's this is something I missed in the first pass too, is there's this weird star in the sky. And it's it's a kaiju itself. And they refer to it as they say she's found us, the queen. Not 100% sure what it is, but these eggs, all that are inside, start hatching, and you're like, oh damn. And for me, I'm a sucker for world building type of stuff, and when you start hinting at the greater world and what's kind of out there and how the cogs are all working together, it very much was spurring my imagination and my sense of wonder. And then the thing is like still awake, like he's still kind of conscious, even though he's been infected by all this stuff and he's on his dying breath. And it's so effective at setting the stakes. By the time, Noah's fleeing, he's like, come on. And he's got the special, look, it was an eye trapped in sort of a gem is what it looked like in the art, that he hands it to him. He says, here, take this. So we don't even know what that's going to be used for yet. And he's like trying to escape, and all these little kaiju egg maggot things are chasing him, and they get through the teleporter, they crash, and then it's back to where they were, except this time the eyeball's all torn up because it was in physical form. Anyways, that whole scene to me just was so effective at like upping the stakes at a point where you didn't think they could be upped anymore. After the last issue and he's left dying with his entrails spilled out of his body, you're like, it can't get worse than this. And here we go. Nope. You're like, Jesus, dude, where's this going? And that to me is such compelling storytelling, especially in this sort of genre of like action and stuff, because the greater you can create the threat, the more exciting the hopefully the ultimate victory that you get, if you get an ultimate, is, right? It's boring to watch a hero, stop a super easy threat, like, oh, hey, look, I rescued a cat from a tree. Wasn't that an exciting story? You're like, no, not really. But this, I'm gripped. I'm like, well, what are they going to do? What's going to happen? And there's all these like little dangling threads, like Noah rescued the leader of the kaiju gang that worshiped the kaijus. I feel like that's really important. They spent a lot of time, in the previous issue where he's like lowering him down the rope and stuff. And this is the guy that kidnapped him and caused all this problem. And I feel like he's going to be important. And the whole time he's in the back of my mind. Every little panel's got such charm. We talked about the bicycle thing, the pedaling, but here too, like we see one of the kaijus talking about, something or other, and we got one of the kaiju gang just giving him a pedicure. It's just the way that the scene, he's like slurping through like one of those crazy straws and stuff, and it's just the absurdity of how things are put together. I just spend hours looking at this art and just loving it with a grin on my face. And this is everything that I want out of comics outside of the shared universe. It's just pure fun. It's every part of this book. I'm enjoying myself. So yeah, anyways, I spoke way too much on the favorite scene part, but did you have a favorite scene of the four books together, or a favorite, what something that stuck out to you, not necessarily a scene?
Think I did really like the scene from this book. I was very much looking forward to issue number 4 because of where we left off in issue number 3. If I go back to it, like probably issue number 1, where we had kind of learned about a little bit about the excuse me, about the UltraMega lore just on the planet Earth. I like, I'm a sucker for like team up type things. I like teams. I
Mm-hmm.
like sports. I like working together with people on
Yeah.
things, more than like, doing things by myself. So to see the like the kaiju kind of team up, like the original three people or whatever that they had there, and kind of see them, all link up to get together to fight. That was probably my favorite other moment. If I yeah, like that particular scene right there where they're all like, getting ready to face off. I just kind of always like, things like that. But that would be mine. What about yours, Ash?
For sure, the first issue probably is still my favorite. It had the most impact on me because I'm starting at ground zero, so I had no expectations. So much happens. The page that I'm hovering on now, where we see the sun kaiju who beats his dad and he knocks his head off. When I got to this, after everything that had been so far leading up to this point, the epic moment of him doing the mega fist, shooting it in the ground because he's like, you got to find another. I turn the page and this happens. I was like, this is just not what you expect. You don't expect the hero to get their head knocked off. Like, it took me back. And I love it for that. Like, I love that I never felt like I knew where I was going, but I never ever felt like it was a wrong decision. I've never, sometimes you read a comic or a story or see a movie or whatever the case, and something goes and you're just like, this doesn't feel right. That's kind of dumb. They should have done, this is the wrong direction. This isn't, like Fawn's jumping a shark, it's like, what are you
Right.
doing? Like, what? This book never does anything. Sometimes you're like, oh, I didn't expect, that's weird. But I never feel like, oh yeah, James, yeah, we need to talk about your right. Like, I don't, I'm like, oh, okay, let's see where this goes. And this scene here where he's getting his head, this is my wallpaper on my iPad. I just love this shot so much. And I love how book 4, this is why this is relevant, is I didn't think about this the first pass. Dude, this guy's head, like, he literally didn't just, that he knocked his head into orbit. Like, literally, at first you see this picture and it's like, oh, he kind of knocks his head, probably flew half a mile away. No. He knocked his block into orbit. Again, going to the absurdity of everything, like the dead body, it's like a flood of blood. Everything is amped to 11 in this series. And I think maybe that ultimately is my answer to what my favorite thing is, how everything is amped to 11.
Makes sense. This is definitely an 11 type of book. And again, kudos to James. Does not feel, at times, there are parts and sections that maybe don't feel so smooth. Right? You talked about how things feel a little raw. I'm usually a fan, like, when I think of bands, I'm usually a fan of like their earlier material where things weren't so polished. They were a little more raw, and it was a little bit more about just how they felt and just getting this expression out of their bodies, into a medium that can go forth into the world.
Yeah.
And this book is very much feels like that. This is a very, raw, kind of punk rock, type of book in its approach. So 11 is the proper number.
Awesome. Well, I think we're kind of coming to the end here. We got through both books. These are thick books. This is nearly 100 pages of material we just went through. I think we covered it pretty effectively. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this discussion. Rio can make a comment in the chat that the maggots bursting out of the atom body was whoa-ho brutal. I like that. Whoa-ho brutal. I 100% concur on that. Next episode of the Indie Comic Show, Firepower makes its return. So hope you guys will continue to join us. That's another one of our favorite books. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to cover UltraMega for the rest of the year, it seems. However, there is an indie series coming out starting next week called Skybound X. Skybound is Robert Kirkman's imprint over at Image, of which UltraMega is part of the Skybound imprint. And the thumbnail that I used here for the show today is the B cover for Skybound X #1. It's the one I'm going to be getting, just because I'm such a fan of this. And I think we're going to get a small UltraMega story in that. Skip, are you going to be getting the Skybound X books?
Yeah, I plan on getting them.
Cool. So, depending on how good they are, I expect them to be good. There's a likelihood we'll talk about those on the show in the upcoming weeks. Do you have any final thoughts about this book or any other books or anything else that's on your mind before we put a bow on this?
Yeah, soon, but before the next time we stream, Haha #6 will be coming out. I try not to get like too deep into the whole speculator market and whatnot, but I'm such a fan of Ice Cream Man. I'm such a fan of Haha. W. Maxwell Prince that there is a crossover. The clown, I forget the clown's name, from issue #8 of Ice Cream Man, is going to be taking the lead in the final issue of Haha #6. And the cover of #6 is a recreation of Ice Cream Man issue #1. So if you haven't really checked out those books yet, this is pretty good opportunity to kind of jump in on a very fun cross point or crossroads, where the two books kind of intersect. There were even some covers that went out that were very, very much not easy to attain. I wish they were easier, because I definitely would have gotten the first one, but Ricardus, the Ice Cream Man, is pieing the clown from Haha, so they're like sister covers. But I love that book so much. It brings me so much joy. Sometimes I open up the first page and I just like kind of look at the setup and I just get so giddy I have to like close it. So I wanted to share that with y'all. Haha #6. I don't think it's this week. I think it's the 14th, but double check it. But you might want to grab Haha #6 and support W. Maxwell Prince and Martin Morazzo and Chris O'Halloran and good old Neon, because they've been a heck of a crew.
If I didn't know better, I would say that you were a W. Maxwell Prince fan.
Yeah, I definitely am. I haven't read anything from him that I disliked. I'm getting ready to jump into his Judas book here in the next 2 weeks and then finish up. I started one of his books, but I ended up wanting to read 1 week in the library instead, which I see Jimmy Comics Quirks is in the chat. He and I did a review on his channel that may still be up about that book, but so much of what he writes, he mixes being heartfelt and clever and witty and like artistic and tasteful, like all together so well. So I don't expect it to be everyone's flavor, but it's just a book that speaks to me so much, and I do believe the quality is there. I don't expect everybody to be into it, but if people are looking for quality comics, maybe not just a specific genre of comics, but just quality comic book, like, I feel like what the height of the art form can be, W. Maxwell Prince is out there doing exactly that.
Well, I just recently picked up the first issue of Haha #1 on Comixology. It is completely free. So I recommend you indie fans. This is a great thing to do. I know sometimes a book may not seem like it's for you. You look at it and go, oh, I know my taste. That's not for me. But if it's free and people are talking about it being good, I encourage you to pick it up and give it a try, because sometimes something will come out of left field and you'll be like, I never thought I would have liked this, and it's free. You got nothing to lose. So go pick up Ice Cream Man #1 from Comixology. I did. I haven't got a chance to read it yet. I've been busy doing other things. But it's on my reading list. I'm looking forward to, because I've been hearing nothing but great things. I did read Haha #1 and enjoyed it. It hasn't been my thing. I kind of was thinking about coming back when the trade came out, but I might end up, depending on how much I like Ice Cream Man and I might come back and get this this number 6. Because number 6, is it 6 that's a crossover or 25? Or what number of the Ice Cream Man coming on?
6 is the official crossover. I'm not sure that Ice Cream Man is going to cross over with 6 because the character came from Ice Cream Man issue number 8.
Oh, I see.
But issue number 24, which was the most current issue that is out and published, has a sister cover, crossover cover with issue number 6, which will be coming out soon.
I have to say, credit another thing. I love the covers, some of the variants that they do. I'm not a big variant guy, but like I have up on the screen right now, over at League of Comic Geeks. Is a great place to see all the different covers. I especially love the Dr. Seuss variants. Because Ice Cream Man is, it's not your typical type of comic, so not every type of thing fits. Sometimes like the horror comic type thing will fit. The Dr. Seuss, it's so, again, it's the absurdity. the tying in of Dr. Seuss with what these books are about is just, I don't know, it just tickles my fancy. So, what book, is there a specific cover of this issue you're looking to get?
I want to get the, I would like to get the Dr. Seuss cover. I'm definitely going to get the main cover A, because it's an homage cover to Ice Cream Man #1. So that's just right up my alley. And if I can swing it, I would really like to get the sister cover to Haha #6, because I'll go back later and probably spend way more money than I should. But if there's any book that I'll do that for, it's this one. And I will get the matching sister cover for issue number 24 of Ice Cream Man. Outside of the Dr. Seuss cover, if you end up getting this, Ash, I do like that one too that you have up on the screen as well. That like with Ricard, because again, it's a haha cover, but that's Ricardus from Ice Cream Man, like with his little clown nose on.
Yeah, that was this
right there.
Yeah, I have it also backstage if you want to see it live. But
Sure.
Yeah, this was my favorite cover. Well, I don't know. I like the Dr. Seuss is my favorite, but knowing what the content is, I really like the cover of the Ice Cream Man inside the freezer bin. Yeah, I'm very curious to see where this goes, what this issue is all about, because like I don't know anything about Ice Cream Man. I do know a little bit about Haha. And I always like finding new things. The toughest thing for me is I don't read as much as I should. And I feel like I get dogpile, like I get, a mountain of stuff on me. And then it's just like, I feel like I can't dig myself out. So it's like, I want to read more. It's like my tastes or my desires are bigger than, what's it, the whole thing where they talk about your eyes are bigger than your stomach, where you like, I do that with books. I get all these books and I'm like, oh, I can't read them all. And it's like, and they start piling up because they keep coming out month after month. So anyways.
Absolutely. And it's even like for the crossover thing, you asked earlier on in the stream, Silver Coin, do you have to read the previous ones in order to be able to jump in on the current one? You don't. And Ice Cream Man is the same way. You don't have to read any of the previous ones, jump in on the current one. So if you want to be prepped, you can go back and completely read issue number 8 and get I think his name is Hank. Yeah, Hank the Happy Clown. You can get that backstory a little bit and see that see that character, and then jump straight into Haha number 26. But the cool that's what I love about Ice Cream Man is if you do like read all of them, if you like it just gets richer and richer. It's like each individual issue is its own ice cream cone, but the more you read the previous ones, it's just like you just keep piling chocolate syrup or whatever your favorite condiment is like right on top of the scoop, so it just gets sweeter and sweeter. I couldn't avoid that one.
All right, kids, well, it's only $3.99. Indie comics are still the best value in the comic business, cheapest books, and the best content, in my opinion. Skip, it's been a pleasure doing another show with you. I can't wait to do the next one. I love doing these. I love talking about these comics. I love talking with you guys in the audience with us that are able to be here live. Thanks so much. Feel free to leave comments in the YouTube also if you weren't here live or just have more to say. I also have a Discord channel, which is found in the description of the YouTube description there. And Skip's part of that too, and we could chit chat occasionally in there. So come join us. I'm Ash. That's my boy Skip. Go ahead and say the closing words for us, if you would.
Bye.